Today is Wednesday, May 25th, 2011. I'm Matthew TG.
I'm Steve Stanley.
I'm Heath Mullican.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. The world's only user-antagonistic podcast. This is episode 109. Woohoo! Good morning, everybody.
109.
Yeah, hey, so Steve is joining us via Skype voice. No pictures of Steve today. Steve, I mean, this is really going to disappoint our fan base. You know that.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got my purple Speedo on, too, with the hot stripe.
No, Steve.
And we want to welcome the chatbot today.
Yes, it's already here. Popped in real quick after that.
The apocalypse is upon us now. So did you guys see the president had kind of a faux pas with the Queen?
He had a lot of faux pas. Did you realize it was 2008?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you see that?
No.
He signed the guest book at Westminster Abbey and just had this great quote and then put March 24th, 2008.
Wow. So it took everything back 3 years. At the dinner, what was the faux pas?
Okay. He's getting ready to do a toast.
Yeah.
During the toast, he paused. He was trying to go. He has his notes, puts his notes down, picks up his glass, pauses, going back to his notes. When he paused, the band thinks, well, we're ready to go. They start playing God Save the Queen.
Uh-huh.
Well, when they play God Save the Queen, you stop, you don't say anything. Well, Mr. President kept trying to do his toast over the music.
Oh, no.
And he's sitting there holding his glass. Everybody else has his glass down, so he puts his glass down. And I guess he finished the toast. Well, you don't take a drink until after the song. So it's like, put it down, pick it up, put it down, wait there awkwardly. I will say this. He did give the Queen a better gift this time. Last time they were there,
Region 1 DVDs.
Well, no, that was the Prime Minister.
Oh.
He gave the Queen an iPod Touch with his best speeches on it. And this time he gave her something real nice. So
Okay.
it was,
That was interesting. All right. Hey, let's get into the show. We want to welcome one of our favorite people, Genetta Herrera, out in Kansas. Genetta, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Listen, for those who may not know who you are, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and what you're doing right now in ministry?
I work with districts in helping churches to turn around. I do assessment centers for church planters, and currently one of the churches that we're intimately working with is Olathe Wesleyan Church here in Olathe, Kansas. We moved it to a developing church and came in almost 3 years ago now. So
And how's that process
before we
going?
got here it would have probably closed in a couple of months before we got here. The average the month before we got here, which included Easter, was only like 40-some people.
So how's that process been going?
It has a lot. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, which is what I say, when pastors are wanting to do things like this.
right.
But we have planted a church out of here. We lost about 40 people, and we are currently running right at 100.
Wow.
So we have gone in to demolish a part of a building and redo things, move things into financial order. I mean, you take into account absolutely every single area of a church when you go in to refocus a church, from the finances to the control leadership base, whatever it might be, whatever it might be.
Hey, Genetta, are you familiar? I don't want to get off topic or go. Are you familiar with any of Nelson Searcy's work?
No.
He does Church Leader Insights. He pastors in New York City, and I've just been getting into a lot of his resources. He talks about the 8 systems within the church and how to get those going, and it's just, for me, kind of going into the same situation you did. Trying to kind of breathe some life into a church that had been through a lot of transition. It's just been really helpful, kind of on the strategy side.
One of the things that have been told me by Keith Drury, actually, who's out of Indiana Wesleyan, it was quite a few years ago. He said people that go into like consulting or whatever it might be, he gives them about 3 years, and then their information becomes outdated because of how things so quickly change.
Wow.
And in working with the churches, with all the churches that I have, things that you know that are true and the process that you are sure is correct, one of the things that has done is it's put it to the test again. How much of things have changed from what you've said? What are the issues? Are you still dealing with the same kind of issues as we have gone back into working directly with the church and not from a consulting base, but consulting and being automatically, on the ground floor of it? So.
Yeah. Well, listen, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this show, I actually knew back in March that we were going to get you back on the show because on March the 17th this year, you posted something on Facebook that was, to say the least, controversial. You provided details about a church that you believed had a chance to turn around, but in the end became derailed in the process. In your post, you provide a timeline, a history, details about meetings, and plenty of names. To be more specific, you refer to several people by name. The DS, the pastor, 4 present and past staff members, the pastor's coach, 4 LBA members, and, unflattering things were said about some of these individuals. There are many people who believe you had no business in posting anything about this situation. This morning we're not going to get into the name of the church. We're not going to name names. But the inevitable question is this, Genetta: why? Why would you have taken all that information? I serve as assistant DS, so I can argue the establishment part of this thing that, we need to keep information behind closed doors because there are lives, that are affected by this kind of stuff. So I guess this is kind of your platform. Why did you do that post?
Okay, there are several different levels of the why, so it's not like just one particular answer.
Sure, just unpack
This is
it for
why.
us.
Okay, I think one of the reasons why is having worked with people from that church, being a part of some of the information from it for several months down the road. One of the things that was the saddest to me is it ended up exactly as I said. This is going to end up. If you don't do some of these things out front, if you don't get some of this information out, it's going to become derailed right at the very beginning. Or before you can even get anywhere. So that was one thing. Look, how can we stop this thing from happening again? I work with so many churches and so many pastors, and you have people that are hurt over and over again because the patterns of behaviors in churches is not broken. How can we break those patterns? So another why, one of the ways that you break a pattern is you identify the pattern. You can't break something until you put it out there and say, look, this is what is going on, and this is what has been going on for generations in something so that we can deal with it. Those are 2 of the whys. Another why is
just a minute, Genetta. So before you move on, so in your estimation, why is it important that this pattern be made public?
The pattern be made public, like to just everybody?
No. I mean to the church. So you're talking about the process that within a church that you wanted to experience turnaround. So if you identify a pattern, a poison pattern, your argument is that within that church, everyone needs to know, okay, this is a poison pattern. So what's the importance of that coming out on the surface?
One is once you can get the truth or the other side to the truth that's out there, it protects people from the future. One of the things that happens in judicatories, and if we're going to specifically say, like in ours, is that people aren't told what is going on in a spot. So a pastor leaves, another pastor comes in, the pastor that's coming in has no information of what has happened or has limited information. So the next pastor comes in thinking that, oh yes, I'm the person, I'm the superhuman man or woman that can deal with this issue, because all they see is something that's on the very surface. They don't see all of the stuff that's gone underneath it. This person comes in, gives it 2 or 3 years or more of their life. They're beat up, they're chewed up. They move on. The next one comes in. Until you can say, look, we're going to talk openly about what happens here. We're going to contact each other. We're going to contact past pastors. We're going to contact the coach that came in to do information. We're going to deal with issues on board level. We're going to deal with things so that a church has a chance to deal with what's going on so that they can walk out into the world and stop doing all of the internal stuff that's keeping them from focusing on what it is that God's called them to do. And that's not going to happen unless you can just put it out there. Another reason that that's not going to happen is we have people coming out into ministry, or you're moving from one church, you think, you know what, I can't do it here. So you go online and you see a post about a church that says, you know what, we are in a metropolitan area, or we're in a suburban area, or we're in this beautiful little country area. We want a new pastor to come in. We have these things that are there. And you're sitting there looking at this stuff online. You're seeing that. You go in, you interview with a board. You're there for a weekend. Do you know what happens in a weekend? You're given that limited information. Everybody puts on their best face. I call that weekend candidating, internet dating.
Yeah.
Yes.
All of that comes into where can we find a place that we're going to put out truth? You know, truth of, look, this is history of what has been happening in places.
This reminds me of something that Dr. Peter Cha says. Dr. Peter Cha is a sociologist at Trinity International University, and he says in church cultures there are two kinds of, he puts it this way, two kinds of theologies or doctrines that are at work. One is the explicit. That's what you find on the web page. That's what's in print. He said, but the other is implicit. And he said, you don't learn that by just showing up. You learn it over time. And what you're saying is to bring health to the church, that implicit has to come out to the surface much quicker, and we all need to be aware of the implicit things that are at work within a church, right?
Absolutely, because for a church to turn, for a church to literally turn, we know that it takes like almost 10 years, a generation, when you are focusing on every single part of the church. It does not, and if these things are hidden underneath there, they don't rise their heads up until you've been there for a while. After the, quote, honeymoon period or whatever it might be, all of a sudden things start to appear. If you could deal with that stuff on the onset, you're going in with knowledge, with information, so that you know how to handle the stuff that's been going on there for a very long time. Coming here to Olathe, for example, one of the things that has allowed us to turn it, and we're not done by any means, but to make the progress that we have, is that I knew the information. We knew what issues we were dealing with. We had dug, we had been a part of things. You knew that there was this underlying control factor between different organizations. You knew what you were dealing with, so that then you said, look, in order for this to work, these are the things that have to take place prior to coming in. Mm-hmm. If we could get to that point, it's almost like a patient going to a doctor and giving the doctor limited information. When you go to your doctor for the first time, they want to know your history, and not just your history from 10 years ago. Mm. They want to know about your parents,
Good point.
About your grandparents. They want to know this stuff. If the church is a living organism, and not just an organization, then bringing into effect the organism parts, which are those things that live generation after generation after generation. They carry over into it. And until you can identify those things, you don't know how to handle it, which is the same way a doctor doesn't know how to effectively doctor you till they have the total picture.
Sure.
We, in the last years, have tended to think of the church and deal with the church as only the organization, not the organism. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. Heath, I think you have a question.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, Genetta. Last August went into a church that has been through a lot of transition. It is the oldest church in the district, and if you look at their history, especially back in the early 1900s, probably up to 1960, a pastor only stayed a year or two. And I'm told that it wasn't because pastors were on a circuit. That's just how it was back in those days. You would just kind of rotate and go through different things. So if there's no long-term pastoral leadership, there's a leadership vacuum. And so I think it not just my particular Wesleyan church, Baptist churches, any denomination, when there is such a quick turnover of pastoral leadership, people step up and fill that leadership vacuum, and the attitude becomes, well, if the pastor's only going to be here 2 years, we have to kind of take the mantle, rightly or wrongly, and kind of run it. And that's where you get your church boss situation. You know, you got these pastors coming in and out, and so there's normally a person in the church who kind of takes things over. The sad part about my situation is I came in and did have a clean slate and did have, a good foundation, because the pastor before me really went through a lot of junk to get the church to where it needed to be. And I think part of what you're saying is what could have been done to avoid the previous pastor for he and his family to be as wounded as they were to get the church to where it needed to be eventually.
That would be part of it. I also think that when you were talking in that, one of the things that helps it to make it possible for you is that the church moved to developing status, correct?
Yes, that was
Keith,
one
is
of
that
the
right?
Right.
Which eliminates some of those issues for you.
Yes.
And says, look, we can really come in here and deal with things. Another thing is, if your salary or your livelihood isn't dependent upon you making the correct decisions, if you're not having to keep people happy so that their tithes and offerings come in there, you also are able to focus on things that need to be dealt with. But when your livelihood depends on it, there becomes this fear for you as pastor or leader that says, wait a minute, I can't make people too upset. I got to make changes really slowly. And not that you've got to know the right pace to make your changes. But when our world is changing as rapidly as it is, if we wait a generation to make changes, we have now lost 2 generations of people.
And go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Well, I think one of the things we can do, and you talked about the internet dating situation where you go in for a weekend and you preach, and I think one of the things, again, not just our denomination, but the way that pastoral turnover has been, you might have one pastor there for 2 to 5 years, and then the next guy's completely different personality, and I think that we should give some thought to this idea of secession. Do you know what I mean? That I think it's going to be interesting in the next 10 years. You're going to have churches like Saddleback and Willow Creek, who are well-known churches, whose pastors are going to kind of be transitioning out. And how are they going to make that transition? Do you think Saddleback is going to bring in a guy just for a weekend and hear him preach one time and then take a vote on him? No. I mean, it is going to be a carefully thought out process.
Right.
And I think,
and somebody that has understood, as you look at that, the history of the church, you've understood it.
Right.
That is why I am a huge proponent for churches going through timelines, not where they identify their issues that go all the way back. If you take a church that's been even a 100-year-old church or a 150-year-old church, it doesn't really matter, or a 20-year-old church, you go back and say, let's identify why that church started. Let's lay out everything. Let's lay out their attendance. Let's lay out all of their changes. Let's put on the timeline the issues that have occurred in a church. Instead, we tend to bury everything. We say a pastor left. This pastor left, this pastor left, this pastor left, this pastor left, this youth pastor left, this youth pastor left, all of that over and over again, but we never say why. What we say instead is, well, God called them to somewhere else. We don't say that this pastor left because they were so tired of fighting things they couldn't handle it anymore, or that this pastor left because they knew that this boat was going to come up and it was going to be horrible, or that this pastor left because, you know what, they never understood the mission. If we could tell the truth about why people leave and could tell the truth about why the church really grew or didn't really grow, and by growth I don't just mean that their attendance went up, I meant that they multiplied out, that things occurred. We can go back and we can look at a church's timeline and see that they had this huge peak in growth and then it kind of petered off. We might look at that and say, oh, wow, they were very effective in reaching their community, when the essence was it merged with another church right at that time, and then it dropped off. Well, let's tell the truth about what has occurred in your history. We want the truth told about our political history. We want the truth to be told, about in our economics what's really going on. But then we come down to the church and we don't want the truth told. Look at
Okay,
look in
well, I'm
Paul's-
going to interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you. Here's the inevitable question, Genetta. Why? I mean, I think that you're dead on about this, and I don't think it's just lay people in the church. I think when pastors come in for that weekend, some of them don't want to know the truth. So why don't we want to know the truth?
You can't handle the truth.
Why don't we want to know the
Honestly,
truth?
I do think that is one of the reasons right there. You can't handle the truth, and there's been this belief kind of that if you are sanctified, holy people, you don't have bad things that occur in you or in your body, and that would make us not be, that would make us not look holy. Instead of realizing that these are the things that we have to deal with. That's what I said. As you go to Paul's writings, he was talking to the church, not that the church wasn't God's church, but saying, look, in the course of what you're doing, these are the things that are happening, and you're getting off here. You're letting these issues, you're letting this sin affect what you're doing. We come to the modern church today, and we want to cover up what the sin is, or give it a good word, instead of saying, look, these are control issues that we're dealing with. That's another reason we don't want truth to be told, because that will take away our control. Information is power, for one thing. Another thing is, if you start dealing with those things, you're going to lose some of your control, because all of a sudden you're out there and you're held accountable for behaviors.
Now, Genetta, you're not suggesting that churches would be involved in covering up information, are you?
Tongue-in-cheek, absolutely. We cover up information on churches. We cover up information on people. Instead of being a body that says our pastors having issues, let's help them holistically and out there, we shoo them away, and bring somebody else in.
Is that
we aren't the place. I'm sorry?
Is that a thing that you notice geographically? That's my next question, because we're such polite Southerners in the South that we don't like to make it known when there's, the person that's the problem, or is this a everywhere kind of
universal deal? And I've been accused of that. Well, you're not from the South, for example. This doesn't happen, and it's like, no. I've been involved in too many districts and in too many churches. I can tell you the patterns and where they occur all around, and they're going to be the same.
Okay.
It's the same issues. What makes the difference and whether something can change or not are that there are basically three components that have to come together. I don't know if you want me to go down that path, but
sure, go ahead.
There's like three components that have to come together especially a church that's part of a denomination, if it's going to actually work, if it's going to turn. One, the district leadership has to wholeheartedly support a turnaround in something, and they have to not be concerned about political agendas. They have to not be concerned about their voting. They have to, as a district, be concerned about making the right choices, not wondering who they're going to offend, but they have to lead. The second thing that I kind of like view it like a three-legged stool. The second leg that has to come in is the leadership team of the church has to agree on the front end. Look, this is where we're going to go. And when it gets tough, we're going to come back around and realize this is where we're going to go. And then the third thing that happens is the pastor that's coming in to do it, or the team. I would never want just a single pastor to do it. They need to have their team of leadership there with them, has to realize they're being called into a huge battlefield. And the sad part is the battlefield that they're a part of is in the church, not out of the church. It's in. When you put all three of those legs together, that church has a very healthy chance of turning around. In order to do that, though, you are dismantling the power structures everywhere. Whether it's financial, whether it is positional, and positional power is one of the hardest to dismantle, because positional power, I don't know, it carries so much weight with us. We don't want to give up our board position. We don't want to give up our song leader position. We don't want to give up our teacher position. It becomes all about power.
Genetta, when you went into the church you guys are in, and you mentioned that a lot of things had to be done before you and Jim went in there, Did you find? I know it's a smaller church, and what I'm finding is I've got people, and I'm talking about good, godly people, and they are just so overworked. They are doing so many different things, and they're having to do things that they're not gifted in. They're not really passionate about, but it's kind of like if they don't do it, it's things that have to be done. But if they don't do it, it's not going to get done. And so, like, how do you kind of transition them out and let them say, hey, instead of doing these 5 things that you're not passionate about, let's find you this one thing you are passionate about, and then we'll hand some of this other stuff off.
You know what? And because I don't know your story or anything like that, I could be saying something that doesn't quickly apply to you. But it would sound like you're still trying to do church. When you're going in to turn a church, you basically strip down to absolutely nothing. You are not going to keep going the same old programs that you've had. You're not going to keep, you're going down to the bare bones to say, let's get back to the very beginning of why we started. And let's do away with the things that keeps us from focusing on turning a church around. When we came into here, the same thing that I said needs to occur at other places, you strip down, you know. You didn't do your midweek stuff. You didn't want to do your Sunday school things, all the things that you had typically always done. You said, we're going back to the basics. And when you go back to the very beginning, you're going to lose more. You're going to lose people again. But you got to keep in mind that if this church has been in this process for a time, those people that have been doing those things to just plain keep it going have begun to get ownership on that stuff as well. And you have got, I don't know how to say this enough. You've got to get back to where you're not focusing on all of this other all the other information, all the other activities, but to the very basic of what you're doing.
Right. So in other words, the church can be very busy but not be on mission.
Exactly, and you don't become on mission just by adding something else in there. You come on mission by taking away everything and saying, what is our one mission that God has called us to do and to be a part of that no other organization can fulfill? What's the one thing that we can do in this community? It's to impact it for Christ. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it means that programs are going to go on in the church. It is taking the people of the church to go outward, which again changes everything. It changes how you view what the meaning of church is all about. But all of that stuff comes in together when you are turning a church. Here's another aspect of why it's important to go back to history and tell the truth about it. We have churches that have started because people gathered together because they were mad at other churches. You now have in your DNA a different issue you need to deal with.
Yeah.
If a church didn't start to be missional and you come in and you're talking about it, you're going against the very nature of why that church started. So how do we fix that? We have churches that started from splits. We have churches that started because a group was becoming interracial, and we want to not be like that anymore. You have them for all different reasons. But until you identify what the purpose is, you don't know how to correct you don't know how to make corrections.
Genetta, the question in the chat room is, obviously there's a lot of, this is a labor-intensive process. How do you propose that we do such hard work in a short amount of time as the model that our denomination has right now? Or are you suggesting a new model and perhaps a grassroots movement to change things?
I am suggesting a new model and a grassroots way to change things. It's much more intensive with what God has called us to do, and it does not occur. I don't believe that it's going to occur from the top down. It's going to occur from people along on the grassroots that say, look, we have got to get to be about what God's called us to be about. Mm-hmm. It means that you have pastors, male and female, that know how to ask the right kinds of questions when they go into the church. That said, this isn't about me just coming in and preaching my best sermon. This is about, let's spend some time and show me. Wouldn't it be awesome? Tony, you go into another church and the church is calling you and talking to you, and what they say to you is first is, Tony, here's our history. And what you got was not every time that they built a building. When you talk about history in our churches, most of the time that's what you get. We built this building here. We paid off this debt. We painted the building this color. They don't tell you about those social psychological issues that have gone on in the community, that have gone on in the church, the things that have dealt with it. They don't tell you financially, look, these are our donors. We only have 3 people that give the whole budget of the church. Oh, look, you've got a whole nother issue to deal with if you see that kind of a history. What could you do if churches and district leaderships and pastors together said, we're going to look at this as the holistic body that God has intended it to be?
While you say that it cannot be top down, I would agree with that because you can't force it. At the same time, especially at the district level, Genetta.
I believe,
you
at
can,
the district level.
Yeah, you can really set the groundwork for that at the district level. And I think that as far as the position of the district superintendent, there are times that you should use the bully pulpit, and I think this is one of the issues where you can. I know on our district we have used more and more this whole redesignating churches to developing status. And I think you've already mentioned that, but I think that is key, and you can create the atmosphere. But that being said, even with a grassroots movement, things of that nature, we're not talking about something that's going to turn around overnight. It's going to take time to create that culture.
And exactly, it doesn't. It's not going to be this flash in a pan because we've brought somebody in who is a fantastic communicator and people from other churches come. We are talking about changing and dealing with internal issues that have kept a church off mission, and that has nothing to do with someone being a fantastic communicator. It has to do with dealing with the stuff underneath it. And you said I believe too, it can occur at a district level that sets the culture for it, but that requires a district superintendent that is more concerned about how do we make the right choices, that runs interference for their pastors, that stands up and is willing to take shots, that becomes part of the protector for that. Now, not to protect a pastor so that lay people have no voice. I don't believe in that either. It is definitely coming together, but it's coming together in a way that says we know that we have each other's back as we go through this process, because it is hard.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Genetta, do you think that's why so many young leaders today are planting? Because when you go and you do a church plant, there are fewer rules and regulations. You do have a lot more freedom. And what I've seen is, as some church plants have grown and have become some of our larger churches in the district, there are things that the district could demand of my church that we would kind of comply with. A large church of over 1,000 people, the district can't make any. They can make some demands and ask some things of them, but really, once you're under kind of that model, you can't kind of go back and rewrite history and make it like you want it. Does that make any sense?
I do think that that's one. Also, when you go into plant, you're creating your own problems instead of inheriting generations of other problems. And therefore, which would you want to choose at times? I don't know if this is a true analogy of it, but in some instances, it's like having your own child or adopting a child at 9 or 10 years of age. If you adopt that child, do they need adopted? Absolutely. But you take on a whole different set of issues that you don't even understand them all. So what do people recommend when you do that? They recommend that you go through counseling so that you can understand all the things that are being brought into this new relationship so it can be healthy going into the future. That's not recommended when you have your own child at the beginning. You're setting the pace for it. My desire is that we would have as many people rise up that want to fight the battles of going into turning around churches, that we want to have to going into plant, because it's going to be a both and if we are going to change the culture in America. It's got to be the both and.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been good stuff, Genetta. You know, last time we had you on, we said we're going to have you on again, and I'm just going to say the same thing. We want you to stick around. We're going to go ahead and shift gears here, and we're going to move on to the
Download of the Week.
Hey.
All right,
So I
Teach.
get to talk about this?
Yeah, man.
All right. So last week, we had that video of Heath in the Hummer, as you recall.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
we had a problem because the individual who had recorded that video had forgotten to get it off of his iPhone and to the computer, and we couldn't get to the account where the iTunes stuff would sync that video across. So I used a little tool that I like to use from now and again to get stuff off of my iPhone or others' iPhones. We used iPhone Explorer, which we link you to in our show notes today. It's a Windows or a Mac-based piece of software. Basically what it does is it has a way of when you plug your phone in, it will get very down, all the way down into the root level of the phone. Be careful, because if you start messing with root files, you could really mess yourself up big time. But you can dig down through there and find stuff like those videos, photos, music, anything like that without having to sync with another computer, because as we all know, when you try to sync an Apple device with another computer, what does it do? It erases the whole thing. It wipes it out and starts afresh. So this will save you from that. So we'll link you to that. This company that has these, I'm looking for the name right now so I can remember, Macro Plant. They have a lot of neat little tools. They have a few other free ones. Some are paid for. This one is free, and that's why we link it to you today. We also, I need to mention real quick, because I have, I promised to do this. Cody Thomas, who's the guy who works with us on occasion doing stuff, has a contest going right now, a giveaway really, where if you follow pastors, if you follow his design studio site, it's Soul Hope Studio on Twitter. I'm going to put the words up on the screen there so that you can hopefully kind of see that. If you follow that, and he's got a thing, a tweet that if you retweet it, he is giving away just a free sermon graphic. He'll design and put together that series of resources for a series that you may have planned. So be sure to follow twitter.com/SoulHopeStudio and retweet that so that you can enter that contest.
For those who may not know, our show opening was designed by Cody Thomas.
Cody did a great job.
Excellent work.
And I tell you, it was his one of his first times playing around in Adobe After Effects, which is what he used to create it. And I'd say for first time to use that program, never having taken a class or anything, he just basically learned it so that he could do that for us, and just did a fantastic job. He also, on his website, I believe it's soulhopestudio.org, or whatever it is. If you go to technologyshow.com, the link is his logo that's on our site. If you click that, it'll take you there, and he's just got a great portfolio of stuff where you can see some of the stuff that he's put together for First Wesleyan Church /Alive. Their infographics, business cards, photography, just all kinds of stuff. And he has a really good eye.
Yeah, we just highly recommend him.
Yeah.
If your church has graphic needs,
web design,
like that. Sure. Yeah, please take advantage of that. Go to our website. You'll see the link there, and talk with Cody, and he'll get you set up. All right, let's go to They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
It shows that being in institutional care affects children right down to the molecular level. Psychiatrist Stacy Drury of Tulane University in New Orleans, who co-authored a study that seems to suggest that childhood stress can impact kids at the level of DNA. Source, Nature News.
Well, I've been mocked and scoffed and cursed at, and I've been through a lot with the lighted sign on top of my car. I was doing what I've been instructed to do through the Bible, but now I've been stymied. It's like getting slapped in the face. Jeff Hopkins, a follower of camping, who spent a good deal of his own retirement savings on gas money to power his car so people would see its ominous lighted sign showcasing camping's May 21st warning that Jesus was returning. A source, Associated Press.
Humanism fills the same role for atheists that Christianity does for Christians and Judaism does for Jews. It answers questions of ultimate concern. It directs our values. Jason Torpy, a former Army captain who is president of the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers, who argues for atheist chaplains. Source, The New York Times.
Yeah, Heath, that's you.
Amazon is experiencing high volume and downloads are delayed. If customers order today, they will get the full Lady Gaga Born This Way album for 99 cents. Thanks for your patience. Amazon.com explaining why their music download site crashed Monday, May 23rd, 2011. Source, allaccess.com.
Even in instances when divorce was a great gift to one or both parents, it was a silent nightmare to a child. What I'm asserting is that divorce leaves major marks on children, marks that reach all the way to the core of their being. Andrew Root, commenting on his new book, The Children of Divorce, The Loss of Family as the Loss of Being. Source, Hermeneutics. All right, where do we want to start here?
I just want to say I'm glad that we're here today. That episode 108 was not the final episode.
Yeah, but just wait till September because aren't we going for round 2 in 5 months?
Yeah.
I tell you, I'm righteously angered at Harold Camping. I mean, he is all he's doing is giving so many people the occasion to scoff and laugh, and he just needs to close his mouth and live for the Lord.
He lost a lot. I mean, this the guy who did the sign is obviously kind of like pretty upset with him. I read an article where when Camping came out Monday and said his little spiel, we got it wrong. We did the math wrong. That one of the teleprompter workers for their show said, well, you would have thought he would have been a little more contrite than that. I mean, so the people that are even in that inner circle are kind of like,
his thing isn't
Cocoa Puffs.
His thing isn't we got the math wrong. His thing is the rapture's already occurred. It must have been more of a spiritual thing.
It was a spiritual judgment.
Right.
I sent in a spiritual tax return this year.
And how'd that work for you there?
I got a spiritual refund.
Let it be a warning. Let it be a warning to all of us, though, that when we only listen to ourselves and those who are like us, we can end up anywhere they are or any place we want to go. And that's what's happened with this guy. He has lost the faculty of critical analysis, and he's quite enamored with the sound of his own voice. And may God save us from being that.
The faculty of critical. That was awesome.
You should see Heath. He's looking up the dictionary right now, Steve.
Here's the thing. This is what I think back to. I guess it was last fall. Francis Chan, pastor of a large church, author of some very successful books, just resigns out of the blue. Doesn't have anywhere to go. Doesn't know what he's going to do. Just feels God's leading him. They actually end up moving to China. He's got a new book coming out. But all his friends, I remember there's a video with him and Mark Driscoll, one other guy, and Driscoll kind of looks at him and like, are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? Why are you doing this? But Francis Chan, that's what God was calling him to do. And some of his friends were like, dude, it wasn't, I guess it is out there to resign from a large church and not have a backup plan and just move your family to China. But I think my fear is we would see somebody like Harold Camping, who obviously has lost all ability of faculty analysis, whatever Steve said. And I hope that doesn't put any fear in my heart that if I am called to say or do something that would seem out of the ordinary, not contrary to Scripture as what he did, that I would not be like, well, he got ridiculed and people made fun of him. Yeah. I better not do this.
You've already hit the key point. Contrary to Scripture,
right?
And what Camping is doing is extremely the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing.
I like Genetta, the quote that Genetta read here, because Jason Tropy has been saying said what the church has been saying for decades now, that there is a religious aspect to humanism and to atheism, and he's coming out and he's saying it here. Now, what's interesting is chaplain is a religious term; it's a religious status. So, but nonetheless, I like the fact that at least Jason Tropy is willing to say that it is a worldview equal with a religious worldview.
Right.
Because that's what we've been saying in the church.
Well, atheists believe in God. They just look at him in the mirror every morning. I mean, that's who their God is themselves. So to say that atheists don't have a system of belief would be incorrect, even according to Jason Torpy.
There you go.
Hey, we got to go back here for just a second and say somebody made a really good comment. A Nashville pastor did in the chat room about us, saying that, when pastors start their own radio show, the prophetic second coming is always a guarantee. It's going to happen at some point, and he's pretty sure that it's the same with webcasters too.
And that's why Genetta's on the show this week.
Announcement you wanted to make?
Genetta has the date and the time.
Can I just say
Wait, my calculations might be wrong.
Can I just say this? Let's see. The rapture was supposed to happen Saturday. What day was it last week where Obama said all the stuff about Israel? Let me tell you, when I got up that morning and saw the things he was saying, I paused for a second. Because I'm like, you picked a bad week to start making Mideast peace deals. The rapture's supposed to happen,
Yeah, you probably weren't the only one. The very first story was a story that, or the very first they said it was a story that Ashley T.G. put me on to. This is an interesting study. There's ongoing research, but this study was conducted at an orphanage in Romania, and kids are put in. Things have changed there, but when they first opened their doors up to democracy and freedom, the orphanages were in an appalling state. And so studies have been authored where it appears that at the molecular level, because of the stress that kids were under, that their DNA was actually impacted. And so when kids are put in these awful conditions, I mean, the effects of that are, again, physical, or could be. There's a second study that's going on now. I think that's an interesting study. Now, couple that with the last quote here that I read, and it's about the book, The Children of Divorce, The Loss of Family as the Loss of Being. And here Andrew Root says, even where the divorce was, if we could couch it this way, a positive thing, maybe it was an abuse situation, the point is still this: it rocks the world of the kid. It affects him at the core, and you see that in the title of his book, The Children of Divorce, The Loss of Family as the Loss of Being. I applaud this book and just the research that's going on, and pointing out the importance of just the environment under which kids are raised. I guess I'm the only one. Yeah.
You're
Commentary brought to you by.
We were talking about those who fall in love with the sound of their own voice.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes.
I appreciate that, friend.
Hey, listen, if there's a chance for us to stab you in the back, we'll get you every time.
Hey,
I think you're right. Tony, and we don't begin to know the horror that divorce has wreaked physically, psychically, spiritually, and emotionally on children. And I think the damage goes further than that. If somebody can walk away from a divorce with no consequence within themselves, to me it's almost indicative of a sociopathic response to life, where you have no empathy for others, no feeling for what they feel, no sense or awareness or appreciation of the sociological ties we bear with one another. And it's really, really been the liberal agenda that has promised people, oh, you can do this and there's no problem. Kids are resilient. They're tough. They bounce back. But they do bear the marks of it. And I've yet to talk with a child who came through the divorce of their parents who hasn't in fundamental ways been altered by that.
You know, last week you had the Arnold Schwarzenegger story where, you know, he's fathered a child with their mate or whatever, and it was interesting during the week to see his either their older teenagers or their young adults, his children's reaction on Twitter, and they were very ticked off, they were very hurt, and I believe, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I thought I had heard that one of his sons was going to drop the Schwarzenegger name.
Really?
And it says, I don't want to be associated with that.
Wow.
I may have just made that up, but I'm
way to go.
87.2% positive that I saw that.
Well, let's hasten on to our last story here. So we have a hat that sold for $131,000. Now, I don't know,
Is it the wedding hat? Oh, my word.
Have
you seen that thing?
Yeah, can you click on that?
Yeah, I'll get a
click
picture
on the
of it.
story.
I'll find a picture
Yeah,
of
you
it.
got to see this hat. I mean, this hat is going for $131,000. Now, this child, is this the child of Fergie and
Holy
Prince
dear.
Andrew?
Yes.
Yeah.
This hat was sold. I'll get the picture up here.
It's been called, here we go. It's been called the toilet seat hat.
Oh.
Yeah.
And once you see a picture of it here, you will know why it's called the toilet seat hat. Now, okay, so why would someone pay $131,000 for this? It has to do with the royal wedding, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's history. But surely there's something else for sale that you could buy other than this hat.
There it
I mean,
is,
where-
ladies
I mean,
and gentlemen.
think
There
about-
it is. He's got it up there.
Think about this.
There's the hat.
I'm-
That would look good on Genetta, wouldn't it? I could see we're going to have, what we need to do is see if we can get a copy of this hat. The next time Janetta's with us, she must wear it the whole broadcast.
Here's the thing. In my lifetime, there have only been 2 royal weddings. And where are you going to wear? I mean, you're not wearing that thing
Wait.
to
You're not
Six
talking about
Flags.
you and Karen's wedding.
Oh, it was definitely a royal wedding. But you're not gonna wear that hat to a Clemson game, not unless you want to get beat up. Well, that'd just be at a Dodgers game. So,
All right. Well, there you go. 100.
I got to come back and watch the show later. I don't get to see the pictures, so
sadly you don't.
I'm
right.
I'm
But it's so
envisioning this
beautiful.
hat is somewhere between Aunt Esther's and Bella Abzug's.
If you haven't seen this hat, that's oh man,
Oh, my word.
where have you been?
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we had someone that won the Kindle edition of what book was it?
Yeah, Heaven is for real.
Heaven is
Oh,
for
good
real.
gracious.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and play this voicemail.
Good morning, May 11th. Great show today with Dr. David Spittle. I was kicked out of the chat room because I sent too many messages per minute. I think I sent it 3 times, so lesson learned. Won't do that again. Great show. Keep up the good work, guys. Bye.
There you go. Joe Gormong is who that was. You are the winner of the Kindle book, and you got kicked out of the chat room. So
wait, how did he get kicked out of the chat room?
he was talking too much.
Not that we would.
I thought that was the purpose of a chat room. We need Genetta to straighten them out.
That's right.
Oh, me.
Come on, boss lady. I'm on your
so
side.
Joe, when you hear this, be sure to email us. I need your email address that's associated with your Kindle account. It can be just a Kindle for a PC, a Mac, whatever. Just however you have that set up, and then I will send you that book. You can send me that email address to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com.
All right. I want to remind you that in the up and coming month, we have Kevin Beers, who'll be with us on June the 1st and he'll be talking to us about ministry to college age.
A second round
adults.
of beers.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thank you, Heath. Well, I got kicked out again by this by the bot. And on June the 29th, Chris Conrad will be with us. And I think probably, Genetta, you can inform me here. I think West Michigan is one of those districts that's really worked hard in this whole realm of church multiplication, but also turnaround churches. Am I right about that?
They had Mark Gorvette did a great job of leading up there.
Yeah, and I think
setting a base for things.
Yeah,
setting a foundation. Jim and Mark were a great team.
Well, and Chris Conrad, I think, is trying to continue that legacy.
To build on that.
Yeah, so it'd be great having him on as a guest. Also, we have confirmation from Bob Weitzel. We're just working out the dates right now, but he said he'd be on.
I'm looking forward to that. I got the chance, if you didn't see it on our YouTube channel, I got the chance to talk with him at the gathering. And I was just really impressed with him and his demeanor and the kind of guy that he is. I think that'll be a great show.
And I'm working through his book, Waypoints.
That's the book he wants to discuss.
And it is a very, very fascinating book that just walks through, I think there are 16 or 17 different points along a person's spiritual journey, from no interest to fully devoted follower of Christ. So good stuff.
Had a chance.
Hey guys,
yeah.
I don't have back chat way to get this to you, but I just wondered if we could ask a serious question of Boss Lady about the tornadoes and what churches are doing there in that area and how people are faring. She's right in that area.
I'm sure, like, we had tornado watch again last night and it's supposed to be today. And you can see on the news about Joplin. We have a group going down tomorrow just hauling water. They just need water desperately. I mean, it was a pretty, what is it, the tornado of the century, they say.
Wow.
Yep.
So
how
it
far
is
are you
bad.
from Joplin?
We are 2 hours.
Okay. All right.
And Joplin's about, I don't know, it's a little smaller than the city that we live in. It's like I hadn't even really paid attention to Joplin till this.
Well, my understanding is most of the town of Joplin was affected by the tornado. Much of it was wiped out.
They've used our hospitals, like people have been shipped up to here for things. Our team of rescues, like fire departments and things, have gone down to there. They are now blocking like roads so that only if you're through the Red Cross to get in. But it's pretty bad.
Our hearts and thoughts and prayers are with you all. We really are concerned, and I'm glad you're doing well, but we're praying for all those who are suffering because of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, one other note about guests in the future. Benji Kelly has agreed to be on the show. We just have to work out the dates with his administrative assistant. So that's coming. And then we have other guests that we're working on, and certainly we'll be announcing those as they get on the calendar. We want to, again, thanks Genetta for being on today. Genetta, are you anywhere on the internet where our listeners can find you?
As in, just email is the best. It's Herrera at churchplanters.org.
All right. And then you also have a Facebook account, I believe, don't you?
Oh, Facebook, absolutely. I love Facebook. And then I love texting. So
all kinds of great pictures of Genetta on Facebook, I must say. Check out her profile there.
I think my kids hack in or something.
Yeah, blame the kids. That's good, Genetta. You're a good mommy. Way to go. Throw the kids under the bus. All right. Hey, Steve, where can our listeners find you?
Hopefully nowhere if they're bill collectors. Other than that, I'm at First Wesleyan Church of Greenville, South Carolina, the best church in the denomination. And they have the worst pastor, but the best church. Yeah. And you can find me on Facebook, too, facebook.com/steve.stanley.
Hey, your response, Steve, made me think of a story. Joe Brockington, who is dean of students at Southern Wesleyan University, after years of not seeing Paul Brown, who's a personal friend of all of us here, he sees Paul Brown doing some camera work at Southern Wesleyan, and he said, "Hey, I think I know that guy." He said that to his wife, and so after the event was over, he went up to Paul and said, "Are you Paul Brown?" And Paul looked at him and said, "Why? Does he owe you money?" No. All right, Heath, where can our listeners find you?
They can find me at chaseyourline.com, and official announcement time next week. I'm going to be starting 2 other podcasts as part of the Techology Show family of podcasts. chaseyourline.com, just going to be a podcast on about helping people pursue their purpose, passion, and their possibilities. And also at heathmullican.com, starting a podcast on being a pastor of a rural church, and a lot of the same type of things we talked about today. Just, what are things that we're trying to do to get our church going in the right direction in a small town environment.
All right, Tej.
You can find me at matthewtg.com, as that's the catchphrase of the site. If you can spell it, you are worthy.
And you can find me worthy. I just love that. You are worthy.
Harold Camping's successor. I'm going to name him today.
You can find me at facebook.com/AKC64. If you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, and please do contact us.
Your comments,
yes,
your thoughts, your opinions.
Yes. Send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com, or better yet, call us, leave us a voicemail. Dial 3049-TEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave a message, and we may even play your comments on the air. Again, thanks to Genetta Herrera for joining us today, and to her great assistant, Jim Wood, who gets her all set up because she couldn't fight her way out of a tech paper bag. Okay? It's Jim who gets her set up, so big thanks to Jim. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios.
Look at that picture there. Genetta looks so good.
All right, it should be done.
All right. Genetta, thanks. Great job as always.
Always.
Thank you.
Yes.
I miss you bunches. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to do the project this summer.
I
You
had
ought
a
to
great
call
talk,
me.
though, with her. I will.
You ought to call me and straighten me out on something, okay?
Well, I don't know, but I want to tell you what we talked about with your professor.
Okay.
Yeah, I will. I'll call.
Thank you.
So
You got my cell phone number?